First thing we're talking about. First thing we're talking about today is we're going to be solving proportions. A proportion is very easy. Proportion is an equation that states that two ratios are equal. Here's what you really need to know. Two equal ratios. In other words, two fractions that are equal to each other. That, excuse me, is what a proportion is. Okay. That's the important part. Now, proportions are some of the easiest word problems to solve. We'll get to one of those at the end. They also tend to be one of the easiest types of equations to solve. Because what you do is you use the cross products. Cross products of a proportion are equal. Okay, that's what you use to solve proportions, and you use cross products. It works every time. Okay, you start out with fractions. After one step, you don't have any more fractions. So what does that mean that the use of cross products of a proportion are equal? If we have the proportion of A over B equals C over D, and we're not allowed to have zeros in our denominators. That's what the B and D are not equal to 0. You're never allowed to have 0 in your denominators. If we have this set up, then if we multiply across A times D and B times C to the cross product, those are always equal to each other. So for example, on this one here, 3 times 12, 4 times 9. 36 equals 36. That is what you do to solve proportions. You do the cross product. You multiply across, get rid of the fractions, have an easy equation to solve. Any questions so far? Okay, matching units. When we get to solving the word problems, matching units is important. Okay. With proportions, make sure that the units in the numerator match and the units in the denominators match. You're going to set up a proportion. And you want to make sure that the units in each fraction match up. So if I have miles over hours, and my other fraction that's in my proportion, my other ratio, also has to be miles over hours. That's what it needs to be. That's what it means about having those match up. Some of the students were having difficulties with one of the problems, getting a number that was really wrong, but that's because they had one of them flipped over. They didn't match the units. Okay, so we want the same ones not flipping, hours over miles. That's no bueno. Okay. We need to have matching units, whatever those units are. Cookies per recipe or per pound. I'm blanking completely right now. We'll see too when we get to the word problems. I just will listen. I'm just completely blanking. One of those things. Okay. Now, solving the problems. Solving a proportion, and this is where your calculators will come in handy in getting your answers today. When you have a proportion, it's really very easy to do. Very, very easy to do. You do the cross product. Now, if I only have one variable, I like to do the one with the variables involved in it first. So, for example, on this one, I do language. 8 times m. So I have 8m equals 7 times 12. 7 times 12 is what? Excuse me. 7 times 12 is 84. Yes.
Nice job getting them present.
We know how to do this. This is a one-step division problem. This is a piece of cake. Okay. From here,
Right?
yeah, divide both sides by 8. And here the 8's cancel. We get M equals 84 divided by 8. Do it on your calculator. 10.5.
Why didn't you let me do it?
10.5 is what you should get.
Okay, I got it.
It's a piece of cake.
I believe it. 20.
So when you're doing this one, same idea, cross products. I want to do the one with the variable in it first. My variable is P, so I do this one first. So I get 3P equals, and then I do 4 times 5 gives me 20. Gets rid of my fractions, makes it easy to solve. What's my first step? I should say, what's my second step? Because I just did my first one. Divide both sides by 3. And you get P equals?
0.5.
No, you did 3 divided by 20 if you did that.
6.6.
You should get 6.6, and the 6 repeats itself. If you got 0.1, you get 3 divided by 20, not 20 divided by 3. Make sure you're putting it in the calculator correctly. That's exactly what happens. Okay? Put it backwards, and you won't be the first, you won't be the last. Okay. Questions so far? Okay. So what's the first step I do in here?
4R.
Yeah, I do 4 times R to give me 4R. And then I do equals what? 30. 3 times 10. Then what? Divide both sides by 4. And I get R equals
7.5.
7.5. Questions? Like I said, this is not hard to do. This is actually one of the easier types of problems to solve. Really isn't that bad. Cross multiply, boom, you're done. Cross out this one.
Oh,
I already did it.
Oh, good for you. You should have gotten 12.5. Okay, now is when it gets a little trickier. Still want to do the same process though. I still want to cross multiply first, but I have to be careful about my cross multiplying. When you have something other than just a variable or just a number by itself, put parentheses around it first. So in this one here, put parentheses around the b minus 8, put parentheses around the b plus 3. This will help you keep things properly organized. Now, I still do the same thing I did before. I still do the cross product. 5 times b plus 3. 5 times b plus 3. Okay? Notice what I did. I didn't distribute it, but I have 5 times b plus 3. Equals 4 times b minus 8. A little more complicated than we were doing, but really the first step is we got rid of our fractions. What's my next step I want to do? Distribute. Next one I want to distribute. Get rid of the parentheses. 5 times b, 5 times 3. 5b plus 15. Guys, same thing on the next one. 4 times b, 4 times negative 8. 4b minus 32. Be careful because this is the most common, one of the more common mistakes on your guys' skills test, and when you're working these problems, it has to be times both of those in there. And now it's a 2-step or a 3-step equation. Get your variables on one side. So I subtract 4b from each side. 5b minus 4b. How many b's do I have? 1b. That's nice. Plus 15 equals negative 32. Remember to bring down the negative. Once again, that's the thing a lot of students tend to forget. What do I do next? Subtract 15 from both sides. And I end up with b equals, what was that? Negative 47. Thank you very much. Okay. A little bit more difficult because I have something other than just the variable in the numerator or denominator. A little bit more, but not really that much harder. Okay. Same thing on this one. It looks a little different. The other one had variables in both numerators. This one has one of each and one of each. So I do the same thing. First step I want to do to make sure I do my multiplying right, put parentheses around the variable and the number. So that way when you're multiplying, you remember to multiply times everything there. Okay. And now we cross multiply. 5 times w minus 1 equals 4 times w plus 3. So that's our first step, cross multiply. Gets rid of the proportion, gets rid of the fractions. And now we have an equation to solve. What's my next step I'm going to do? Distribute. Distribute the 5, distribute the 4. Go ahead and do that. You should have 5w minus 5 equals 4w plus 12. What's my next step? Subtract 4w from both sides. Okay, 5 minus 4 is? How many w's do I have? 1. Makes it easy. W minus 5 equals 12, and then from here, piece of cake, what do I do next? Add 5 to both sides, and that gives me w equals 17. And cross out the last problem down here. Bada boom, bada boom, bada boom. Okay, now we get to the fun one. Woohoo! Word problems. Okay, this is the problem that will be just like the one on your skills test coming up later this week. You're going to get skills test 2. Remember, your skills tests are 1-question tests. Your 1 question will be just like this. Your first step will be to set up the equation, then you solve the equation. You need to show setting it up and then solving it after setting it up. Now, these are the easiest word problems there are in algebra, I honestly think. Because the first thing you do is you read the problem. An MP3 player has 2 gigabytes of storage and can hold 500 songs. A similar but larger player has 80 gigabytes of storage. About how many songs can the larger player hold? So here's what we do. We need to set up a ratio first. What are the 2 items, not numbers? I don't want to have any numbers. What are the 2 things that I am talking about and I am comparing? Gigabytes and songs. So what you do is you set up a fraction for gigabytes and songs. Gigabytes and songs. And this is what I was talking about on the first page of the notes, gentlemen. On the first page of notes, where I said you have to keep your units straight. If you set up a fraction with the units first, then the rest of it is easy to make sure you get it correct. Because what am I going to have? I'm going to have 2 fractions, and I'm going to have gigabytes over songs and gigabytes over songs. That's what I'm going to do. So if I look at it, I go, all right, in my first line I have 2 gigabytes and 500 songs. So that means I have 2 over 500. gigabytes over songs. 2 gigabytes has 500 songs.
Does it have to be gone now? A gigabyte.
Let me finish this and I'll address your question. Okay. So I have gigabytes over songs, and then now I have to fill in my other fraction. So what goes in the numerator of my other fraction? Gigabytes, because how many of them? 80, because that's what the other thing we know is. We know 2 and 500 match up. We want to figure out if we have 80 gigabytes, how many songs do we have? Because that's the thing we don't know. We put in a variable for what we don't know. Gigabytes over songs. 20 gigabytes, 500 songs. 80 gigabytes, we don't know how many songs. But it's still gigabytes over songs. And now we've solved this. Cross multiply. 2 times x is 2x. 80 times 500. How much? 40,000. 8 times 5 is 40. And then I have 1, 2, 3 zeros, so I put on 3 zeros. Divide by 2. X equals 20,000. So that means I can have 20,000 songs. Now, the question was, what if my original fraction was not gigabytes over songs, but songs over gigabytes? Will I get the same answer? Yes, I will still get the same answer as long as I set up the problems appropriately. 500 songs over 2 gigabytes equals x over 80, and I would still get the same answer. You would still get the same answer. It doesn't matter which one goes on top originally, as long as the units you're talking about are straight all the way across. I have gigabytes on top. I need to have gigabytes on top of both of the other ones. I have songs on the bottom. I need to have songs on the bottom of both the other ones. If I flipped it over, I just have to flip over both of them. You'll still get the same answer. That's the nice thing about proportions. It doesn't matter which one you start with, but as long as you keep the units straight, you'll get the right answer anyways. I really do. Proportions are some of the easiest word problems to solve. Okay.
Thank God.
Any questions? And this is exactly what your skills test is going to look like at the end of the week.